Are we seeing the end of this? Like Michael Wilbon said, this sort of feels like the last dance. You know, the last dance of the Chicago Bulls in 1998 has, I think, skewed the way we view dynasties because we never got a chance to see it organically end. They won the championship and then they were gone. It was over. We never saw Michael and Scotty and Phil and that group together again. Usually it ends a little more like this, not necessarily with one of the star players being constantly suspended. But it sort of ends with them running out of steam, right, D. Wood? Yeah. I mean, that's the natural end of this, and I think we are seeing that in Golden State.
Absolutely. Like, there's no like celebration to end the dynasty. You know, what's the thing about this? The last glimpse of the Patriots dynasty was Brady throwing a pick against the Tennessee Titans.
Right.
That was it. Like, you know, you knew at that moment it's over. It's over for New England and that dynasty. And you could cite so many cases of other teams, you know, in sport, you know, in sports history. So when I watch Golden State, and listen, most people know I'm a Lakers fan. I'm a big basketball fan as well. This team just looks old. They do. They look old.
They are old.
They're old. And to have a sustained level of dominance the way that Golden State has had it, it should be celebrated, it should be commended, but all good things come to an end at some point.
Yeah, and it will be. It will be. Again, the Draymond thing, that is, I guess, a real shame of this, is that it does skew. If this is the way it ends ugly.
Right.
In a way that it doesn't have to. Yes, Brady's last play ever as a Patriot was a pick six, but that doesn't skew the greatness of what he was. And you come back, this does, and this puts a different taste in the mouth of the way this thing peters out.
But I think with Belichick, the way that the last few years have gone, is a little bit of a sour taste.
But I don't think that's more the norm. Like they start to lose. You know, nothing stays this way. There's an expression in business: nothing grows all the way to the sky. Like at some point, everything ends. That's what I mean.
Right.
Like I remember. So D Wood, I'm older than you are, but not, how old are you?
I'm 46.
Okay, so I'm a decade older than you, but do you remember the basketball in the 80s?
Yes.
So it was the Celtics and the Lakers, and they dominated basketball in the 80s. And in the Eastern Conference, the Pistons were knocking on that door, couldn't beat Boston, had all these legendary series, couldn't do it, finally beat them.
Yep.
And the Celtics thing ended.
Yep.
Bulls couldn't beat Detroit, finally beat them. And the Pistons era ended. Like, that's what happens. The great ones start to lose. That's what I mean when I say, like, Michael and Scotty just walked away. We never saw them again. We never saw them lose. Part of that, I think, like the Beatles breaking up as early as they did, part of that is we have no recollection of them getting old because they never did.
Right.
And it changes the mythology, I think, of some of these teams.
It's the way, and I think the Bulls example is a great example. I think it's the reason why we hold that dynasty to such a high regard, because our lasting memory was them winning, and then that's it.
Yep.
That's it. Like, dynasties don't usually end that way.
Never.
They usually end on a sour note, guys looking old, not playing up to par, but they literally it was like they hit a walk-off home run.
It usually ends with Franco Harris in a Seahawks uniform and Emmitt Smith in an Arizona Cardinals uniform and Michael Jordan years later in a Wizards uniform. Like, these things don't stay that way forever. So we're seeing the natural end of that in Golden State, and that's fine. Like, these guys deserve the right to be celebrated and feted and all the rest of that, and Steph is still playing great. Unfortunately, this Draymond thing makes it end a little more, as Jay Will said this morning, like a car wreck, and it's sort of like we're all rubbernecking as we watch it go by. NFL officials are taking it from all sides right now. You got their own. Dean Blandino and John Parry are on here this week talking about how the state of NFL officiating isn't as good as it needs to be. And Patrick Mahomes is wearing out the refs the other day after one of his teammates lines up offsides. And all these people are coming down on the NFL refs. It is ironic that this conversation, the jumping off point of this iteration of the conversation, is the officials getting a call right. The officials called offside on Kadarius Toney. Had he not been offside, I could understand all of the reaction. But what we're now doing is we're screaming and yelling about the state of NFL officiating because it came to light this week that they got a call right. I have been saying forever going back to the mid-2000s. Mike and I did a book that was published in 2010. It is the first chapter of the book is about this. Instant replay exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is to clean up a mess that is uncleanable. The job we are asking NFL officials to do is impossible. So many things are happening so fast on a football field that there's no way they're going to get all these calls right. There's no way. And so now, when we have taken instant replay and bastardized it, we've destroyed what it should be. We've got instant replay now taking a 10-minute look at whether the ball moved one iota before it touched the ground. That's not what it was meant to be. That's not what it should be. It should only be there to correct huge mistakes, obvious mistakes. All this challenge nonsense. Replay is there because officials can't be expected to always get it right. We are looking at 27 different angles in super slow motion of something we're asking them to decide instantly. It's an impossible job. You can make it maybe a little better than it is. You're never going to make it. There is no chance you will ever make officiating what people seem to want it to be, which is perfect. Never get a call wrong. That's not on the list of options, people. You're asking them to do the impossible. So we institute a failsafe. We put in instant replay, which should be able to correct the egregious mistake. Parenthetically, it would not have corrected the call at the end of the Kansas City game because that wasn't a mistake. But it would have corrected the call the week before against Green Bay, and maybe Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have been so mad. It would have corrected the call at the end of the New Orleans Rams NFC Championship game, and maybe NFL history would have been correctly rewritten. So certain plays being not reviewable, what are we talking about? Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We should be reviewing probably 10% of what we are, and we should be getting the egregious calls right, and it shouldn't take nearly this long, and it should be solving a problem instead of creating new ones. You know, Bill's future is very uncertain right now. I mean, he's not assured of winning games wherever he goes. I think he will, whether it's in New England or someplace else, but you're correct. I think Andy Reid figures to win double-digit games every year for the foreseeable future because he has that quarterback in the same way that Bill did for all those years because he had that quarterback. So, yes, I think if you're asking me, do I think there's a chance that when it's all said and done, Reid winds up the winningest coach of all time? I think there's a real chance.
Follow-up question. When it's all said and done, is there any chance that Reid passes Bill?
For Super Bowls?
No, just in terms of the answer to the question, who is the greatest football coach of all time?
It's going to be tough. I don't think it's impossible. Let's put it this way. They each had other coaching jobs besides the one for which they will eternally be remembered. Bill was in Cleveland. Bill actually did a better job in Cleveland than most people remember. They were starting to do some winning, and then they were moving out of Cleveland, and the mood just turned horrendous. For those of us who remember it, this would have been like 96, 95, something like that. Whatever year it was, everyone knew they were moving the team, and the city was understandably devastated and everything else. The vibe around everything just went completely south. So I don't know that that's a fully fair evaluation, but it is what it is. His stint in Cleveland was nowhere near as successful as Andy's stint in Philadelphia. Do I have this right? Reid is the winningest coach in the history of the Eagles, right?
Yes, and he's the only coach to be the winningest coach for two different
teams. That's why this came up recently. And he took them to a Super Bowl, and they won a ton of playoff games. So, yeah, I think that
it's on the table for you.
Sure. I think if Andy wins, like I think when one guy's got 6 and the other guy's got 2, when one guy's been to 9 and the other guy's been to 3, it's very hard for me to...
Well, 4, including Philly.
Oh, that's true. It is 4. Okay. So that's a good one. So let's say Reid wins 2 more, goes to 2 more and wins 2 more.
Okay.
Now he's been in 6 and he's won 4. You could absolutely make that comparison. And if he winds up with more wins, sure. I could see having that. I mean, we'll have to see where we are when we get to that, if we get to that. But could I see that happening? Of course.